Happy Friday, everybody. How's it going?
Happy
Hey,
Friday.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let's talk data engineering. It's Friday. It's time for everyone's favorite topic. Today we have Brock Cooper and Jeff Larson from Snowflake. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Glad to have you guys here. So
Glad to be here.
yeah, thanks, Joe.
yeah, of
Matt.
course. And cool. Yeah, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro? Maybe starting with Jeff.
Yeah, so my name is Jeff Larson. I'm located in just south of Salt Lake City. Been with Snowflake for about 3 years as a sales engineer. I've been very happy with the time at the company. I spent about 5 years at Dell and by way of their EMC acquisition before coming to Snowflake. About 10 years at Oracle as a database and Exadata specialist before that. And that's kind of my background, but just having a ball.
That's awesome.
That's a big shift from on-prem to cloud.
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. What about you, Brock? Give a quick intro.
Yeah, so I'm an engineer at Snowflake as well, based in around Salt Lake City, Utah, and have been at Snowflake for about a year and a half. Before that, spent some time as a data warehouse architect at a local tech company in Utah. And then before that, worked a little bit as a consultant, doing data engineering projects and BI implementations. Did that for a few years. Yeah, and I guess crazily enough, I started my career as a CPA, and that's how I got into analytics and did a master's degree at the U and kind of made a switch into data engineering and analytics and BI and all that.
You know, I've always found that finance and CPAs and accountants make some of the best analysts just because they're in the numbers and you have to be right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great start. I mean, you really the thing I've learned is the most important part is what you do with the data, like how you can actually impact your organization or whatever. That's the most important thing to do with data. And I feel like starting in finance, that can give you that leverage. You understand what the business wants, what their metrics mean. And so I think that helped me. But it was still a long journey from the technical perspective to get from just knowing the business side and finance stuff into actual engineering.
Yeah.
We actually have another friend who's doing the same transition right now, right, Joe? I mean, yeah, he's gradually moving, same background, like corporate accounting type background, and gradually ended up shifting into data engineering.
Yeah,
So,
he's going to be a killer when it's done. Awesome. So yeah, the reason why I would bring on the show, I mean, Snowflake's obviously, I don't think it needs any introduction in the data world. But I wanted to talk to people who are actually out in the field, working with customers on Snowflake. I think it's a perspective that we don't get enough of. We typically hear from people who might be using it, or, from Snowflake HQ and the marketing department, like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, come check us out and stuff. But I really want to figure out is like, what are you guys seeing in the field in terms of like how people are using Snowflake successfully and perhaps unsuccessfully? Let's talk about the success part. Like, what are you guys seeing out there in terms of like how are people being successful with Snowflake?
Boy, that's a good question and a broad topic, but
Yeah,
I
we got an hour.
yeah, Snowflake got its start as a cloud-based data warehouse. That was the original focus of our founders when they created the company. That's what they were striving to do, but it's really grown and become more than just a data warehouse. I mean, that's still core to everything that Snowflake does, of course, but at least where I see the most success is people who are really starting to leverage some of the ancillary capabilities of Snowflake beyond just running big analytic queries really fast. It's really about our CEO, Frank Slootman. He likes to talk about the data cloud today and what that is. And that really is about giving access to data to organizations in a way that it just becomes a resource. Data is a resource, like infrastructure, like networking, things like that. And the data sharing capabilities within Snowflake and how we built upon that with the data marketplace and other things to make data readily available to our customers is one of the biggest things that helps to add value. Businesses who are striving to make decisions based on most relevant data that's out there for them, being able to easily access that, I think it just makes everything that much better and opens up all kinds of opportunities to do things that weren't easy or even able to be done in the past. I don't know, Brock, you have any other thoughts of things that you might think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the data cloud is actually becoming a reality. We do see organizations using that, sharing data to different companies or partners or whatever that might be. I do a lot of work in the public sector, and we've seen it very strongly, actually, with a few states where they're using Snowflake and needing to collaborate across the agencies. And you would think, a state government, I mean, I personally don't come from a public sector background, but you would think that they have it all under control and they're all just have all this data and it's all centralized, and it's just not the case. And they don't want to. And that's the strange part too.
Interesting.
These agencies, like they don't want to share their data many times.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're afraid to. They're afraid to share their data across the agencies and how that might look politically or from a governance standpoint. And we've seen them implement the Snowflake data cloud, and even this concept that you'll probably be hearing more and more of called a data clean room, where
Interesting.
yeah, we're two agencies, and this is not just in public sector. This works for other companies out there too. But two partners coming together, putting together data, but putting really strict governance controls around what data each party can see, and only in many cases only sharing data if there is a match. Like if there is a person, hey, I want to see this. Like we've seen this actually for finding fraud, where recently there was a state where there was a prison system, and they had a database full of prisoners, and there was like payments being made to these prisoners, like social payments to help them out, which was against the law. And being able to share this data securely, it was very easy to find this fraud. And we've seen this across all industries too, not just public sector.
Yeah,
I think it's very popular in the media industry as well.
Yeah, media and advertising, the whole concept of a data clean room is really huge in that space as well. You think about a streaming service provider or video streaming service provider who wants to share data with line up customers with a sports station or something like that, and they both want to see where's the common ground between them so they can better advertise and better tailor programming to their customer base, but they don't want to expose their customer base to the other party, either one of them. But being able to join those two data sets together without having to expose the full data sets to either of the organizations, and just being able to look at the data that's matched, potentially anonymized if that's a requirement. There's some really cool things that you can do with the data clean room concept and that technology.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing to me about let's call them cloud data platforms. I know you guys don't love the term cloud data warehouse, which is understandable. And to me, the idea of the cloud data platform is we've taken kind of that old school MPP used to run on-prem and evolved it to the point where it can do a lot of really new things. So for example, you're pushing all your data into object storage, and so now you're a big data tool, right? It's very easy to put petabytes of data into S3. Because everything is ephemeral, you can easily share data across organizations. They can just spin up their own compute, and then it becomes a question of just access controls to basically allow sharing with very, very fine-grained permissions. So you never share anything you don't want to. And I think we're just starting to see the impact of this on the data space. Like we've kind of had data sharing now for maybe 10 years, but I think we're just starting to see what's going to happen organizationally in terms of companies' ability to share data very selectively with partners as they want to.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Matt. When you think about the data cloud it's a combination of the data platform that Snowflake has and the data itself. It's those two things together. The platform is there to allow individual organizations, excuse me, to store data, to query it fast, to do all the other kind of things they want to do with it, and to be able to share it with other organizations. But if there's no data there, it's having that the gravity of the data as it continues to grow. And that's really what we're seeing grow so rapidly right now, is more and more data sets being available out there that the platform can then leverage and make available to our customer base. And that's really what builds the data cloud.
That's really interesting. I mean, in the Snowflake marketplace yesterday, actually, just looking at all the data sets, for example, I mean, there's a lot of data out there. So, I mean, the problem or the question I had was like, how do you prevent yourself from drowning in data? Because it seems like it's almost the opposite problem now, where with sharing in a marketplace and more data, I mean, does this become an issue at some point where you have to curate better?
Sure. That's one of the things about the marketplace, is that there's approvals processes that go through with any data set that's going to be any listing on our marketplace, and the data set that goes with it, to ensure that it is, it's good data. It's coming from a reliable source. It's refreshed on a published basis on how often it is and everything else. It's not, not anyone can just go and publish a data set in the Snowflake data marketplace with a bunch of data that might not be worth anything. So there is a certain amount of, hopefully confidence that comes along with finding a data set in the cloud. But to your point, Joe, there's a lot of stuff out there. You go out and search for COVID data, and all different kinds of sources of that, and weather data, demographic data, financial data. And so lots of times it's, finding where are the sources, what are the organizations that you currently are getting data from and bringing into your organization to use in some way, shape, or form, and are they available on the marketplace? If not, is the provider of that data that you're getting it from, are they currently a Snowflake customer? If so, if that data is in Snowflake, hey, let's change that ETL process that you normally have to bring that data set in from, whether downloading a file from a web portal or from an FTP site, or getting an email with a CSV attached to it and having to ingest that into your system. Let me just change that. Just set up a share with them, whether it's through the marketplace or a direct share one-to-one with you and the provider of the data. We have an organization here with like 90 different third parties that they get data from. And we've just kind of been working with them, going down the list and saying, yeah, these ones here, they're Snowflake customers as well. Let's reach out to them and see, is that data in Snowflake? And they have several dozen of those sources that they've been able to change from a traditional data pipeline process that requires movement of an extract of the data to just direct data sharing with Snowflake. And it saves both the producer and the consumer of that data just a significant amount of engineering time, as well as, a better level of service, because the data is always relevant. It's always fresh. There's no latency of, as soon as the data is extracted from the provider, it's immediately stale before you even get it ingested. Snowflake data sharing, it's always live data.
And I would say too, there is a ton of data out there. Companies have insane amounts of data. The most important thing still is to start from the business question of what are you trying to accomplish? It's not, there's all this data in the world, and supposedly data is like oil and gold, so we're going to get as much of it as we want. No, like, start with your business question, work your way backwards. What data do you need? And maybe some of that exists in the marketplace, and go for it, because that will actually impact your business. So that's what I would say too.
Yeah, and excellent. On the subject of making that easier for customers as well, one thing that will be coming to the marketplace in the next little while here is the concept of try before you buy, and then pay for what you use. Different billing models, but providers will have the ability to, with their listing, allow customers to just subscribe to a data set, a consumer to subscribe to the data set, and be able to view a sample version of that and decide how relevant that data is before they actually have to make a commitment. And then when they do make a commitment, the billing for that can be all handled through the marketplace, where the provider, can set up whatever terms they want. But, say it's $9.99 a month. That includes your first 1,000 queries, and then it's 2 cents a query for every query against our data beyond that 1,000 that's included in your monthly fee. Or maybe it's just a flat monthly fee, or a flat per query cost, or some combination of that. But that will all be available through the marketplace, which makes it a lot easier. You know, you look through everything that's out there, Joe, to your point, and say, oh, this looks interesting, but I have to subscribe and give them a credit card and start paying for it, and even see if this is relevant data to my business. With this new try before you buy capability, it'll hopefully make it a little bit easier to find relevant data out there.
Oh, that helps a ton. Plus the workflow too. I could imagine this being kind of sticky, like in a crack-like sense too, where it's just, I made some reports off it. It's pretty good. People like it. I guess better start paying. So it's smart. It's really smart. So, free samples. Here you go. No, because I remember I used to subscribe to companies as I wouldn't personally subscribe to it, but like companies I worked with, we'd spend close to $500,000 a year on like one data subscription. It's a lot, right? But that also drives the business. So outsized, but data is very pricey depending on the types of data sets. I know companies that spend a lot more than that on data sets, from vendors. So, I mean, I want to get your impression of this, but do you think like, I guess a bigger marketplace where everything's much more friction free, would this mean like this can be kind of a, I guess an effort to try harder on the part of data vendors to make data more accessible and potentially cheaper as well? So it seems like this is going to attract a lot more entrants into the marketplace if it's that easy to sell it.
One of the things that's always been surprising to me is how many organizations have data, which you start thinking about it, you think there's value to that data, but that it's not part of their business strategy to actually monetize that data. They use it all internally for their business and all that. But hey, there are other organizations out there that probably would pay for some of that data, maybe not the proprietary stuff, but an industry aggregated copy of that data, something like that, an anonymized version of that data that they could use for other analysis. And the marketplace is a really easy way to build a new revenue stream for organizations, where you take that data that you've got internally and, list it out there and have a channel to go to market with that and actually reach people who might be willing to pay for that data. It's a very simple way to put something out there and see if it can become a new revenue stream for an organization.
Well, I think traditionally there's been kind of this adversarial relationship between data practitioners and security, right? Security is getting in the way of stuff we're trying to do. But I think this is a great opportunity to see that if you have the right security, that is fine-grained security, where you can decide exactly what you want to share, it actually enables the data organization, because people can get to what they need to without compromising people's privacy, for example, or without compromising proprietary sensitive data.
Interesting. Kind of switching gears a bit. I've heard this term thrown. Snowpark. What is that?
Yeah. So Snowpark is basically this new way to interact with Snowflake in a programmatic way. Essentially enable you to work with data frames within Snowflake. Write Python code. That's one of the new programming languages that we're working with right now. I think you can get it up and running with Scala and Java today. But Python will probably be the most important one. That's what we see most data engineers working with.
Yep.
And just the ability to do your data frame type work with Snowflake directly.
Yeah, that's really what it is rather than having to write SQL to work with Snowflake, you can use data frame interface and the method of interacting with data that way. And kind of what goes along with Snowpark being that client library to use data frames to work with Snowflake data, is the ability to write stored procedures, user-defined functions, and in other languages like Scala and Java, and coming soon Python, and be able to have that code, Java code, Scala code, Python code, execute on the Snowflake platform instead of having to have some third, another platform of compute out there with infrastructure where that code executes. The data has to be moved up there where the Python code or Scala code, whatever, is executing, and then written back into Snowflake. Along with Snowpark kind of working in conjunction with that, is that ability to run and execute program, code from programming languages right on the warehouse nodes inside of Snowflake without having to move data outside the platform.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, so if I'm a user of Snowpark, do I just treat it like a regular worksheet then in Snowflake, or like how would I interface with that?
So your code is today. In the future, you might be writing your Python directly in Snowflake. But today, the way that you would work with it is you would probably have an external notebook that you're writing with. The difference, though, is because, I mean, we've always had Python connectors, and you could have got that data, turned it into a data frame. The difference would be that you're pulling that, into memory. With Snowpark, you can go run your procedures on massive data sets, terabytes in size, and you're instead pushing that process to Snowflake. So today it would be external in a notebook or wherever you want to run that process. But that's definitely what we're working towards is having it all executed in Snowflake.
Yeah. The one thing that you can do with that today is, if you have a Scala code that is loading the Snowpark libraries and leveraging those data frames in the code, you can compile that up to a jar file and push that jar file up to a stage inside of Snowflake, stage just being a cloud storage location, and then create a SQL user-defined function that points to the code in that jar file and actually executes that Scala code as part of a user-defined function that you could then call in SQL queries directly from a worksheet inside the Snowflake interface. And that function just executes that Java or Scala code right on we start up a JVM on the warehouse nodes where the query's running and actually execute the code right there on the Snowflake platform. So yeah, and like Brock was saying, at some point in the future, you'll be able to just write an anonymous block of Scala or Python code or something in a worksheet and have it execute right there.
Interesting. Are there any considerations if you're writing in Snowpark? Like I know in like Spark, for example, like you don't want to write stateful code because it's going to get distributed, and so you don't want to have to write for loops, for example, because it's a dumb idea with the distributed system. Is there any if you're using Snowpark, is there any guidance in terms of like best ways to work with a potentially distributed system as well, or is the SDK like pretty cut and dry with guardrails?
Yeah, so Brock, I don't know if you have any comments on that. My developer background is farther in my past than I would like to admit at my old age at this point.
No worries.
But there are security concerns with executing code on the Snowflake platform where we do disallow things, like procedures and functions and stuff that make calls to outside network and stuff like that. So there are some security things that lock down inside of there, but yeah, for the most part.
The main thing to realize as well is whatever you're doing in Snowpark, and just like you said, Joe, it is a very similar feel to Spark. That's kind of that naming convention of Snowpark. If you caught on there, but the difference though is that you can see what's actually being executed in Snowflake, and everything is still technically SQL based. So when you look at Snowflake's history, it's still using like the same technology behind the scenes. It's just a different way to interface. So you can see that when you're running these transform steps with your data frame, it's actually translating to a SQL statement that's running inside of Snowflake. So there are things that we will do to optimize that, but at the same time, like you wouldn't want to go do something where you're somehow processing the same things that you wouldn't want to do in Snowflake anyway, where you're processing, 10,000 individual inserts at once, or grabbing 10,000 select statements at once, something like that, where you're not going to get good performance out of that. So it's the same sort of concept of, thinking through that in kind of a big batch way, but still realizing that it's Snowflake behind the scenes.
And how are you guys seeing customers using this? I imagine you had a lot of customers in the preview. It's probably been in use for a while. What are the strong use cases where customers say, hey, yeah, this lets me do things that I could not do with just regular SQL?
I think, from my perspective, the primary use case is largely around data engineering and building data pipelines that I've seen more and more. It's even on the data science machine learning side of things, where you might package up a model or something that's been trained and package that up to a jar file, and like I was saying before, write a user-defined function in SQL that can be called to actually apply that trained model to your data through SQL statements. So both on the ingest and on the use side, where you might see Spark be a primary platform that customers might have used historically, or organizations might have used historically, a lot more of that can be moved on both sides of the data back into Snowflake itself.
Yeah, 'cause I think that was sort of the disconnect for the longest time, was you had your data science team over here that was using, well, notebooks and Pandas, Spark, Dask, whatever. But yeah, I think under one platform it makes a ton more sense, right? It's reduce the friction. Because I saw a lot, data scientists to bring, as Brock pointed out, into, download stuff into memory, do it on your laptop, and then I'm kind of like, what's the why why is this so damn hard? 'Cause you're not taking full advantage of Snowflake at this point. You're taking advantage of whatever laptop you happen to have, and if you're unlucky, you might be working on a really crappy laptop, to be perfectly frank, in which case you certainly aren't leveraging Snowflake. So it's just a very suboptimal experience. So this is a really cool thing for I think for data scientists. One platform, do your thing, add value that way, instead of just struggling with driver connections to Snowflake and all this other silly stuff that you had to worry about. So
our native Spark drivers have always done a certain amount of push down, where they take a data frame operation and push it down to SQL that would execute on Snowflake. But there's been limitations around that, and still a significant amount of data would have to be moved back up to the platform where that Spark infrastructure. Whereas with Snowpark, like Brock was saying, you can create data frames in a Jupyter notebook running on your laptop and do all kinds of aggregations and data frame functionality with those. It doesn't do anything with the data until you execute a data frame.show, or something that actually requires some output of the data, and then Snowpark translates all of those operations that you've done into a SQL statement, which executes on Snowflake and returns just the results of that. So
that's cool.
The only data movement that happens when you're using that Snowpark library is to return results of actual queries. We don't have to pull data up and do joins and aggregations and stuff in memory on a machine where the code is running.
Right. Yeah. Which, other products were designed for exactly that. It was just a different use case, and the architectural considerations that were written into it from back in the day still are there. Yeah. Whereas I think Snowflake was meant for joining data and queries from day one. So
yeah, kind of looking. Kate says, "What can we expect to see from Snowflake in 20?"
Kate, what's up? Kate Strachny, the queen of LinkedIn, the data community. Good to see you. What can we expect to see from Snowflake in 2030?
Oh boy,
general purpose artificial intelligence. Tell me you're working on it.
I think you could probably ask Frank Slutman, our CEO, that, and he might not know. 2030 is a long way out. I think in the short term, a lot of the focus is around continuing to enable those prime workloads with Snowflake. Data science is a big one. Building data applications with high concurrency, high numbers of users, analytic-based applications based off of Snowflake. Security data lakes is a huge new area of emphasis for Snowflake. I don't know, Brock, what else do you think?
Yeah, I think just continuing to enable more and more workloads, things that you'd want to be doing on Snowflake where you're maybe today doing it outside of Snowflake. I think enabling data scientists to use it more. You're seeing that more and more with Snowpark, but I think you're going to see more and more enhanced. And okay, I know we are Snowflake reps, but we are talking about the future and what if. So don't hold me to this if there's any current customers out there. But I think that you're going to see more and more interaction with actually being able to run ML models on Snowflake. We're already starting to see that. I think it's going to get easier and easier to do that. And then I hope it's easier to bring in data from various different data sources into Snowflake too. I think we're seeing more and more of that. There's been some announcements about different connectors into other platforms, and I think we're going to see some more of that stuff too, or at least I would like to.
That's going to be a big one.
A lot of the focus is just going to be around that acceleration of the data cloud concept. Anything that enables that, about that easy access to data in a secure and governed way, of course, but access to whatever data could potentially provide value to an organization, have it easily available, easily able to be consumed. That's kind of the whole concept of the data cloud. And that's ultimately where it is. I mean, businesses need to make decisions. Those decisions need to be based off of data, whether it's predictive, whether it's a result of analysis that was done historically, whatever the case is. But data drives business decisions, and access to data is all what Snowflake's all about.
That's cool. Unsolicited plug for Kate. She actually has a conference coming out on next Tuesday, so go check that out. Also, unsolicited plug. If you're in Salt Lake City or in the Utah area, come check out the Data for Breakfast. Snowflake and Ternary Data are hosting a breakfast along with a workshop. You can learn all about Snowflake, meet Jeff and Brock here, and Matt and me and everyone else. So anyway, but if you're not, then go check out a dedicated conference with Kate. Anyway, sorry for the delicious plugs here. Another thing, kind of walk back a bit. So we kind of talked about this earlier, anti-patterns, and you're talking about Brock inserts and some other patterns like that. What are some of the anti-patterns you see with people when they use Snowflake, and how would you suggest that they do things differently?
Yeah, that is a good question.
It doesn't have to be exhaustive, obviously, just like the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, so today, I mean, this is one of those things too, like in the future, things may change. As of today, we do see some companies out there using Snowflake as an application backend, but it's usually for specific purposes, maybe for a reporting part of an application. It's definitely not for like it's not a transactional database. That may change in the future. So keep your, stay tuned, I guess. Things may change regarding that in the future. But, as of today, you don't want to be using it as a transactional database. I said that earlier. You don't want to send 10,000 inserts at once, individual inserts. It's going to get bogged down, and you're not going to see the same performance that you will see to insert individual rows into a Postgres database. You're not going to get that out of Snowflake. So, and you shouldn't expect to. It's a columnar-based analytical processing database. So that's like the main one. I'm trying to think, what else have you seen out there, Jeff, that's caused problems?
Yeah, that's the primary area. Anything analytic focused, that's what Snowflake was written for. Originally from the ground up. Architecturally, that's where it's for. We've made a lot of strides recently to get better with high concurrency, low latency type workloads.
Nice.
So that's kind of what is powering the data application space of workloads around Snowflake, where maybe you have a web application that's exposed to your clients, where you might have thousands of clients logging in and expecting to have a dashboard of some kind or a report of some kind that you're providing to them, or some data serviced out of Snowflake, and you need sub 200 millisecond response time on thousands of concurrent queries. Snowflake has struggled with that kind of work in the past. We've done a lot of engineering work to make it better, to where we are able to support thousands of concurrent queries in hundreds of millisecond response times kind of things. But there's still some engineering work that's required around making sure everything's set up right and done right. Just the native out of the box Snowflake isn't great for that type of workload, but certainly there are ways to make that work. And these days, like Brock said today, we try and stay away from transactional stuff, but who knows what the future is going to hold.
Sure.
Everybody,
it's a data cloud, right? So I mean,
I will say too, and this is kind of an obvious one, but I have run into this where we do have customers who are still doing things kind of the old way, which means that they're connecting an ETL tool. Maybe they are doing data modeling, but they're still using that like ETL approach, doing the data transformation outside of Snowflake on some ETL server. That stuff still happens. And it's always my recommendation to use the processing power of Snowflake, leaving your data in Snowflake, which is one of the things why I almost always recommend DBT. And we did have that announcement yesterday that we made an investment in DBT.
Yeah,
I don't know have any details about that, but I was just excited because I'm a huge DBT fan. But
yeah, I noticed that too yesterday. That's awesome. It was a good move.
So I think that And then there's just the typical anti-patterns of like, if anyone's doing this stuff out there, it's not going to work well anywhere. But if you are just doing stuff directly in production, if you're not pushing that through like a good CI/CD pipeline, like I think those things are important. And strangely enough, I probably only see it like 10 to 25% of the time that there is a good setup there. And so that's an anti-pattern everywhere, but like those are the things that I'm always trying to recommend, is trying to get people to think more, hey, your data's in Snowflake, leave it in there, use the processing power of Snowflake, and like get a good like CI/CD process set up.
That's interesting. Yeah, I know Matt and I, we see this a lot too, kind of echoing what you say with transactional databases. Like I think what happens is you get some developers, and I say developers in the most strict sense, like maybe they're not data people, but they're like, we have to do Snowflake. And then they try and approach it like, I know how Postgres works or MySQL works or Oracle. So obviously I know databases. Got this. And then, yeah, just like carpet bombing Snowflake with inserts, treat it like a, regular OLTP database. And then schema structure too. Some of these systems, they almost mimic exactly what you'd see in the transactional, at which point I'm kind of like, why don't you just use your transactional database and not, I don't know why you have two of these copying each other basically. So that's one of them for sure. The other one we ran into, there was somebody who was doing like a JavaScript UDF in Snowflake, but it was written in such a way that it was like going row by row through. It was exactly how a web developer would have written a UDF in JavaScript, or would have just written JavaScript at all. Like, because it wasn't really UDF, but it was like a JavaScript function that was like literally iterating row by row over everything. You're like, just broadcast the what you're trying to do. But again, I think it's more of taking what you're familiar with and then trying to apply that into Snowflake, which without understanding, kind of how it wants to be treated. So.
Yeah, and about the worst thing you can do, worse than inserts or upserts, where you're inserting over the top of existing records because it triggers these big reads. That's one thing we've seen. Like some of the ETL tools don't really hold your hand to say, do it this way in batch, not this other way over here. So what often happens, to what Joe was saying, is they kind of lift and shift an existing ETL tool, don't retune it, and it can cause a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, Snowflake is really fast, and so you may not notice.
Well, bills, right?
Until you get your bill.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We don't enforce a lot of, you need to do it this way, or it's just your performance is going to be terrible. Even when it comes to data modeling and schema structures, we don't say you have to use a star schema or a Snowflake schema, or anything like that. Sure, go ahead and do it. Don't do it. Whatever chances are your performance is going to be good, but there are always, it's like any other software package out there, any other platform, any other tool out there. The more you know about how it works and what's happening, the more you can optimize and make things run the best in your specific situation. Yeah, you can run single row inserts on Snowflake all day long, but you're probably not going to be happy with the performance.
Right.
No, you don't have to worry about how you load your data in or anything like that. But if you do take a little bit of thought to how you're loading the data in, it might speed your performance up pretty significantly of queries when you start querying it. It's like any other tool out there. It hides a lot of flaws and prevents the requirements to do a lot of engineering and pre-work and thinking. But, at the same time, if you've got the time and the efforts to do even just the minimal amount with that, your experience is going to be that much better, like any other tool.
Do you guys offer training to new users?
We do. We have instructor-led training courses and stuff that are available. We generally try and include those with any new contract that we might sign with a customer. There's a lot of free online training, community.snowflake.com. You can go out and register out there. There's some tutorials and videos and other stuff like that. Our documentation also has some tutorials that are available. You can do just docs.snowflake.com, full set of documentation for everything in Snowflake. There's free stuff online. There's paid instructor-led stuff as well.
Kind of switching gears back to, I know we were talking about, you mentioned data lakes earlier. Do you want to expand on that? I think, doesn't Snowflake now support unstructured data as well?
Yes. So it's still preview, Brock? Do you know off the top of your head? I can't remember if I've checked.
It's definitely still in preview. We could check to see if it's publicly available though.
Yeah, so Snowflake's always, from the beginning, supported traditional, what we call structured data, table data, columns and rows. We've also supported what we call semi-structured data. Our definition of that are things like JSON, Avro, Parquet, ORC, XML, that kind of stuff. Natively supported those inside of Snowflake. We have recently announced and rolled out support for true unstructured data, things like images, media files, audio, PDFs, you name it. Any document like that can now be stored in Snowflake. We keep dictionary information about those objects and where they're stored and metadata and all the other kind of stuff about that. But being able to have access to those types of things and actually build workflows that are working on, doing character recognition in a PDF or doing image recognition in a JPEG or a PNG file or something like that. You think about the healthcare industry and being able to write some Scala code that goes out and evaluates an image and an MRI image and looks for, recognition of cancerous tumors or something like that. Simple example of things like that, but having that workflow be able to fully execute all on the Snowflake platform is, there's a lot of use cases for that. Maybe it's, looking at a contract from a legal department that's in PDF format and automatically going through and pulling certain clauses out, whatever the case may be. But it definitely makes it easier to do lots of different works when you can have immediate access to data types that didn't used to be supported in Snowflake.
Sure. I can imagine actually the data marketplace and data sharing capabilities of unstructured is like this vast frontier that can be pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're pretty early in what we're doing with the unstructured data at this space. Yeah, there are a ton of opportunities, potential use cases for that stuff as it becomes more mature and more widely utilized.
Yeah, and I think more and more, like, we are starting to get these the ability to write user-defined functions in different programming languages, including, I think it's been announced in the future, Python UDFs. And so this will really enable you to do a lot of your processing on unstructured data in Snowflake natively, which is going to be great. And it's going to simplify that process, have your data in one location, including unstructured, and push a lot of your processes to an easy to use data platform.
Hopefully you have GPU clusters too.
And it looks like it is out. I think it's completely GA. I said it was in preview.
I thought Python. Yeah, I thought it was announced.
Yeah, Python's still preview. It's
okay.
Private preview at this point, but it's been publicly announced that it is on the roadmap and is coming soon. Yeah, and the other benefit of being able to put all of those data types, even that unstructured data in Snowflake, and kind of one of the things that's key about centralizing that is it also allows the same set of security and governance and user access, auditing, history tracking, everything like that to apply to all of your data. You don't have to have a separate set of credentials for someone to access your image archive or all your PDF files and another set of roles and access control and everything else that's separate from your structured data in your data warehouse or something like that. All of that data, is controlled by the same governance policies at one level that's inside of one platform, instead of having multiple ways that your security team has to be concerned about, well, who has access? How are we controlling access? How are we reporting on that? How are we auditing? Who's done what with what data? It all comes out of the same place at that point, which can simplify things quite a bit.
Just got a question here from Mike Nash. What's up, Mike? Good to see you. He says, first, congrats on Snowflake. It's a huge growth success. In light of Snowpark, do you anticipate more clients looking to squeeze more value out of their data with AI ML, i.e. more online data crunching? Is this a future area for Snowflake?
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, it's Snowflake has classified data science as a workload that we can help with for some time now, but really the benefit that Snowflake provided with that AI ML type workloads was in easing the the ability to get access to all of the data to feed to your models, to train your models, whatever else that you needed. The industry numbers are anywhere 70 to 80% of a data scientist's time is spent doing data wrangling, quote unquote. Just finding the right data, getting it to a format, getting it all to a location where they can actually feed it to a model to actually do something. And Snowflake was very good about simplifying access to data and getting it to your machine learning engine really quickly. Now with the ability with Snowpark and the coming ability with Java, Scala, Python code running natively inside of Snowflake, we have the ability to take a lot of that work and run it on the Snowflake platform that it used to have to go out to code running on a Spark cluster somewhere, or third-party tool or something like that. So definitely that's the direction it's going, Mike. You're spot on there.
Anything to add, Brock or Matt?
No, yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
Best relationship. What he asked about.
Oh, let's see this one. This one looks like a fun one. Cody Abbott. What's up, Cody? You just read an article about Snowflake's relationship with AWS, from competitors to an alliance. I think I saw the headline of this article the other day. I didn't read it.
Yeah.
How has that helped or changed things at Snowflake?
So yeah, I've personally seen this. AWS has been a great partner, and as you could tell, like, we do have this weird relationship with the public cloud providers. Each one of them has tools, or a set of tools that kind of overlaps with Snowflake, either directly or I guess varying levels of success there. But that's what I've seen with AWS, where they are more and more just really caring about, and this has always been what they've wanted, is what their customers want to accomplish. And so I've talked to a lot of solution architects at AWS, and they've always said, I don't really care what they use. I'm there to help them out. I want them to solve their problems. And so they don't hold this grudge to say, no, we're always going to use our data products. You can't use Snowflake. There's nothing like that. They're saying, hey, Snowflake is one of the best data platforms out there. It's going to help you accomplish this initiative and this initiative. And they bring us in and talk with their customers. We bring them in, and I've personally seen it where we work very strongly together. And it's a very strong message of bringing your data to the cloud. On the AWS side, all of your databases, and on the Snowflake side, enabling your analytics and data sharing and kind of data cloud processes.
And I think for the reasons you cited, it's always been a bit complicated between the public cloud providers and Snowflake. But I suspect that on the AWS side, there's a growing recognition that not only do you guys use AWS resources, but you interoperate with all kinds of AWS things. And so you make the cloud better for customers just in a more general way.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old saying, fish where the fish are.
Yep.
Right? So, I mean, data gravity is the other cliche too. It's like, oh, data gravity, but it's a real thing, right? There's a reason companies, the clouds want you to bring your data over, because if they can do that, then you have a more incentive to use all their other services. And so, and I see this all as a giant, I guess a cooperative ecosystem. Really, it's, I mean, everybody wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think even at a very higher level, you do see anyone can see this, that we run on AWS, and so we're one of the top AWS customers out there, and so they, from a company level, they have a huge incentive to work with us. And I think that's kind of trickling down as well, and to the local level. And so I think it's been great, and it's turned out to be a really excellent partnership.
Yeah, I mean, at Ternary, we partner with both AWS and Snowflake, really. So, when we're in customers pitching, we don't really have a dog in the fight. It's like what's going to work best for the customer at the end of the day is what we are committed to as well. We're not here to shill vendor A over B. It's like at the end of the day, we work with both. So we really actually don't care at all. So that makes the decision a lot easier for us, where it's like, well, what's the business requirements? What are you trying to do? Versus always trying to hammer into the customer. Well, you got to use vendor X because we just said so. So you should take a word for it.
Yeah. And that builds trust. That builds a ton of trust on the AWS side I think it would be less trustworthy if they were to just say, no, we're 100% the best at every single thing out there. I don't think that's a way to earn customer trust. And I think to me, I'm impressed by them that they can come in and say, this makes a ton of sense on AWS. Hey, and we connect in extremely well to Snowflake, and this really will enable you guys to work with data a lot easier. So
I mean, then the rational, it's like, hey, you're getting paid either way. Like,
right.
customers data in S3, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's S3 is like one of the best annuities I could think of. That is such it's such a money making machine.
It is. Yeah.
And the article specifically talks about our relationship with AWS, but we have similar with Microsoft, with Azure and GCP.
True.
Obviously, there's differing levels of conflict and partnership and everything else across the cloud vendors. But at the end of the day, Snowflake is something that drives consumptions. And so at the top levels of those organizations, that's what they care about, is consumption of their platform.
Right.
And if Snowflake's going to help drive that, then, that's all the better for them and the better for us.
Well, and that's what you guys care about too. It's not just landing a deal. It's about, ongoing consumption. Like, how do we make the customer experience an ongoing thing, right? I mean, it doesn't serve you any well if people sign up and then just churn. So
yeah, in fact, it's a negative for us individually as part of the sales organization, and for Snowflake as a company. It's a very different paradigm than, the way it was working as part of Oracle or EMC or Dell sales organizations, where there is zero incentive to ever sell a customer more than they actually need to consume. Snowflake is a company. If we sign $1 million deal with an organization and they write us a check for $1 million, Snowflake does not recognize that $1 million as revenue until they actually consume that by using the product. And the sales organization at Snowflake, part of the compensation is based off of, how much is consumed by their customer base. And so there's, it's a disincentive to try and convince someone to spend more money than they need.
For sure. I just finished Frank Slootman's book, Amp It Up, too, and he actually hit on that as one of in the early parts of it, where he's like, yeah, it's an interesting business model. Like, we have to be customer focused by definition. So, because like, we don't get paid, you have these commit contracts, but that doesn't, consumption is what drives it. So yeah, that's really cool. Anything else that's new in Snowflake that people should be aware of that we haven't touched on?
One thing that I've seen more and more, and it's kind of taken me it's given me some time to reflect on, like, maybe my past data sins. I don't know if that's what you'd call them, but just the ability to do a lot more data governance inside of Snowflake. And I think as coming from data engineering, I feel like there can be this part of you that you just want to start coding and building stuff out, and data governance, it's like, yeah, this is something, the boss is making me think about. But in Snowflake, we're starting to really push out some new features that can speed that process along. And that's something that I see a lot of our customers just absolutely loving and gravitating towards. And it's really become an extremely strong suit for Snowflake, our data governance features. And just to name one, we could talk about features if you want, but just to name one, it's just the ability to do very simple data masking with a policy. So creating policies just using SQL code based on the role that's accessing it, based on other things, ability to tag tables and columns, and being able to apply policies to say, hey, if this analyst is logging in, they're not going to be able to see phone numbers. We don't want them seeing phone numbers. But they still need to develop the report because it's for HR and they want to see this report. And the HR person, when they view the report, they'll see that data unmasked because they'll have a different role. And so that's one thing that I've seen almost every customer just absolutely love, is this data masking, and very simple way to manage it, and also very powerful. That it's a very easy way to keep your data safe.
Awesome. Got a final question from Mike. Always has good questions. With a very busy data tool landscape, do you think Snowflake will grow, absorb more tools, or will Snowflake allow clients to run their own tools through Snowpark?
I think it's one of those things where, Brock and I don't think are at the highest levels of strategy decisioning inside of Snowflake, but the when you think about Snowflake, Snowflake has one product that we sell. We don't sell a whole bunch of products that you integrate together. It is one product, and that does factor into the organization's decisions about whether to acquire technology, to buy companies, versus investing in companies. One thing you've seen Snowflake do a lot recently is make investments in third-party AI ML companies and other, like DBT, not in the AI ML space.
Oh, a Data Robot, I think, is one, right?
Data Robot, Data IQ, historically, but we haven't really done much in the acquisition space, especially around tools, because then that tool has to be integrated and it has to provide that seamless experience that it is part of the one Snowflake product, not an add-on to that. And so I suspect probably won't see a ton in the acquisition space. I could be wrong, but that's kind of based on history and based on what our leadership has talked about, the direction of keeping that simplified one product interface and experience with Snowflake. We'll probably continue more down the partnership and investing in third parties to help them work better with Snowflake and other things like that. Certainly, we do see a lot of third-party tools actually already leveraging Snowpark. The reality of the matter is the reason we did Java Scala before Python was because more of our third-party ecosystem writes Java and Scala code, and they could leverage that inside of their tools out of the gate. Our customer base, certainly Python is very popular there, so we got to get it to market fast. But that's Snowpark's already being leveraged in a lot of those third-party tools in the ISV space.
Are you talking about like the Apache ecosystem, especially, or?
The AI ML ecosystem primarily for the Java Scala stuff. Yeah.
I think all the libraries are still written.
Being able to push down a lot of that stuff and run it in the Java code in a UDF inside of Snowflake is something that we see tools already.
It was a curious thing when I first announced, we're supporting Java first. I was like, okay. Guess I won't be using that for a while.
It's very traditional.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense that you're going after the
it's the ISV space that drives the functionality, and so we catered to their demands first, and it's like, hey, let's push this out and make it usable to the entire community there as well, and the tools that they're using most, like Python.
Yep.
I don't know, Brock, if you have a different opinion about the third party acquisition and things like that.
No, I agree. I mean, it's kind of funny because we do compete with other ecosystems out there where you are pretty locked into their tool set. And I think Snowflake sees that as a positive, that we are a piece to the full data ecosystem. And I certainly see it as a positive that you can pick and choose your other tools. I mean, right now you could integrate Snowflake with most data tools out there, unless they're specifically locking you out, because we have ODBC, JDBC connections, and that's how you connect most tools. But so I think we're going to stay pretty open and wanting to have partnerships and connecting with these different tools. And just like Jeff said, it's like we invested in Data Robot and Data IQ, who are competitors with each other. We're not picking and choosing. It's just whatever is working out for our customers.
I think when you try and become all things to all people, that's a lot of the competitive conversations that we'll have is, vendor XYZ has product XYZ that's just fully integrated all of this. I don't need an ETL tool and a presentation tool because it's all part of my suite of products, my product. But in reality, it's still a bunch of individual products that you're integrating underneath the covers with that, and then you're locked into just that set. You can plug stuff in, and we'll integrate with the pieces of those same suites of tools. But you don't have to. You can choose whatever ones you want around the side of that.
I think it's a smart approach. I mean, I noticed this with cloud vendors too. I mean, because they have, if you're selling the cloud, typically you're selling a lot of different tools, right? Like sometimes all of them. And Snowflake has one, right? So in the data space, it's like, when it's evaluation of, do I want Cloud X? Do I want like Snowflake? Well, okay, Snowflake does this, like one or two things. Let me see. So your cloud. So the sales rep really has to think about, okay, so like I can't possibly master the 100+ products I'm selling. If you're a cloud versus if you're selling Snowflake, it's like, yeah, I mean, we do this. So it's kind of like the menu. If you compare like a Cheesecake Factory menu to like In-N-Out's menu. Like In-N-Out sells a burger, you can get cheese on it, and you can buy fries. That's literally the menu. So.
I don't want to say that Snowflake is a simplified, limited set of capabilities or
Oh,
anything.
sure.
Yeah, you can build data pipelines in Snowflake. We'll auto ingest data with Snowpipe from S3 locations. You can create a stream and a task with a stored procedure that does all your transformations and everything else. If you want to write SQL code and do all that, go for it. It's great. It works fantastic. But there's value in buying a tool, a third-party tool that provides a really sweet user interface that's easy to master, that you don't have to write a lot of code behind the scenes, and there's value to customers buying that. And we certainly don't want to, put those other vendors out of business. We want to partner with them and make that integration as strong as possible so that customers who are using them can get value from them with Snowflake.
And it's also smart because the data landscape is changing so quickly right now. There's so many tools. If you were to try and pick winners in this space right now for all the various tools in any niche, good luck. You're probably the best VC in the world at that point, by the way.
Why would we want to say you got to build all your data pipelines just with Snowflake? You can't use Matillion, you can't use Talend, you can't use Fivetran, you can't use DBT, you can't use data services, you can't use Informatica. No, use whatever you want. If you want to build it in Snowflake, go for it. If you've got expertise and value that you've spent engineering pipelines and processes already in these other tools, leverage it, use it with Snowflake.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. It looks like we're coming up on time here. There's actually one question from Giselle. If you want to answer this really quick here, Jill, what's going on? She just asked, does Snowflake have any case studies in the federally qualified healthcare community health space? Any quick insights on that?
I don't know if you know, Brock, but neither Brock or I are part of our healthcare vertical, but we can certainly try and find some. Off the top of my head, I don't know because
we do have healthcare experts, and I would reach out, and you'll get hooked up with a rep that would have anything. So I don't know.
I would guess that we do. Healthcare is one of our strong verticals.
My guess is we do, and I've worked in the public sector, and we have seen these industries that have very strict requirements. They move into Snowflake because of that, because Snowflake handles that very well. I don't know if you'll need this, but Snowflake is FedRAMP certified. We do have Gov regions in AWS and Azure. And so those types of things may help out your case. But again, reach out and we can get you introduced to someone who knows.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Giselle. Yeah, she says, thank you. FQHCs are unique animals. I would know nothing about this, but I'm taking the word for it. So awesome. And Sam Ott says, this is all around great session and appreciate the Kill Team's insights. Thanks for putting this together. Anytime. Like I said, we're longtime fans, friends, partners. So it's always good to see you guys. And again, Tuesday, March 1st, if you're in Salt Lake, come to the Data for Breakfast. You can register. Let me find a link here real quick, or just look for Data for Breakfast in Salt Lake City and just register for that. There are other Data for Breakfast going on, so make sure you register for the Salt Lake one or not for the one in Boston or something, because you'll be really disappointed. So, but we'll be there. You'll learn all about the new stuff in Snowflake. You'll get to, I think most importantly, network in person for the first time in a long time. In this case, at the Grand America, which is a pretty nice place. So. And then Matt and I will be doing a 0 to 1 workshop with Snowflake or something like that. I think it's called. So, and you can meet Jeff and Brock and hammer with all your great questions and get autographs from them and everything else. So,
kind of want your autograph, Joe.
Bring it in.
My autograph is worse than most doctors. It is the worst handwriting ever.
Well, makes it valuable.
It would be a line. And
there you go. So
everyone just forged my signature all of a sudden too. So, so awesome. Well, cool. We got a jet. Actually, we got to get ready. We're going to do a dry run of the lab right now. So,
okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys, and we'll see you guys Tuesday. And thanks to the audience. Great questions. And we'll see you guys soon. Oh, next week, by the way, the Friday show, we got Nick Schrock. I think the co-creator of GraphQL, and he's now the creator of Dagster. He's going to be on along with Scott Breitenother, founder of Brooklyn Data Company. We're going to be talking about Bundlegate. So there's an article that came out about the unbundling of Airflow. We're going to be diving into that. That's going to be a ton of fun. And this Monday, actually, we have Andy Petrella on the Monday morning data chat. Andy is an OG in the data space, so you can't miss this one. He's also hilarious. So anyway, we'll see you guys soon. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.